Well, welcome back. I'm sorry about the interruption to proceedings a little earlier, but to all of those of you who were here when that occurred, thank you very much for an orderly and, I think, pain-free evacuation. Certainly as far as this particular room is concerned, I can't speak for any other room, but thank you very much. And I think we are now ready to go on, Mr. Millett, are we?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Right, so...
if you could please have the
could we
witness.
have Mr. Egan back, please. Well, Mr. Egan, I'm sorry about that interruption to your evidence, but we are now ready to go on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Egan, just before we broke, I was asking you a question about whether you had shared your view about the need to evacuate Grenfell Tower with Group Manager Welch, and your answer was not at that stage, no. Did there come a stage when you did share your view about the need to evacuate Grenfell Tower with Group Manager Welch?
I did speak to Group Manager Welch when he was in the base of the tower later on during the incident, and I've voiced my concerns that we need to be getting people out.
Right.
But when I first met him in the command unit, it was, the role that he gave me straight away was the utmost priority for him, and that's what I dealt with.
And if instead of being given that role, which we'll discuss in a moment, you had carried out your function as fire safety officer, what advice do you think you would have given Group Manager Welch about evacuation of the tower?
It's only from what I know now, after being in the tower, that I could have given him any information with regards to the stairwell, the number of people in the premises, and the means of escape once they've come down to the ground floor level. But I couldn't have given him any information at the time, so that would have aided his decision making in how to get the people out of the tower.
Exploring that just a little bit more, if in your role as fire safety officer, had you been left in it, you were carrying out your function under policy to advise the incident commander on what facilities may be in the building and on the operation of the facilities. At the time, and on the basis of what you knew at that moment, what advice would you have given him?
There wasn't, from what I knew at the moment, from what I knew at that time, I couldn't give him any advice because I didn't know what the premises was, what systems it had. I couldn't give him any information.
Now, at the top of page 3, you say that he just stopped, and said, I want you to take charge of the fire survival guidance calls, FSG. And when he said that, did you know what he wanted you to do?
I believe so, yeah. He did give me a little bit more information. He gave me a bit of brief of that the guy, Norman, was there. He was from the command unit that I was to go on to. He said that Norman's got a list of all the fire survival guidance calls that we've had so far, and that he just wanted me to take control of it and start liaising with the Bridgehead.
Would it normally be part of your role as a fire safety officer to handle fire survival guidance calls?
Not. So where initially I was ordered as a fire safety officer, when I attended that incident, that in effect that was taken from me because he didn't want me to perform that role. He wanted me to perform the role of a station manager in charge of fire survival guidance. So my whole thought process then is, right, what do I need to do? What sort of policy do I have to follow?
When he gave you that instruction, I want you to take charge of the fire survival guidance calls, did you ask him what advice was being given at that time by brigade control to callers?
No, I didn't, no.
Did you ask him even about the nature of the conditions in the building that those at brigade control were finding out about?
No, I didn't, no.
No. Did you discuss with Group Manager Welch the kind of tactics or strategy that those on the ground would be adopting in order to work with what information was coming to brigade control on those calls, those fire survival guidance calls?
No, it was so dynamic, and as I did mention, I do know Richard Welch, and I've worked with him in the past. So where sometimes you would give a lengthy sort of handover of what you wanted doing, roles and responsibilities, right. It was quite obvious that he wanted me to deal with the fire survival guidance on a separate command unit that would leave that command unit to deal with the operations itself.
Did you ask Group Manager Welch about whether search and rescue was underway in the tower?
No.
So would that also mean that you didn't ask him about what search and rescue methods were being used?
No, my intention was to get the information, make contact with the Bridgehead to find out what structures they've got in place and what personnel that they've got ready to deal with it.
Okay. So I think in the light of everything you've just been telling us, you saw your role as really one of structuring the communications rather than addressing yourself to the actual advice that was being given to callers.
Yes.
Would that be a fair summary of your...
Yes.
Right, thank you. Then we go on in paragraph 1 of page 3. You say, I asked for the details of what we already had and spoke to Watch Manager Norman Harrison, who was one of the command unit staff. He was writing what information they had up on the board. And just pausing there, where was this board?
The board was on the initial command unit, the initial command vehicle. There's just like a whiteboard there, so he was writing stuff on it. It had flat numbers and floors. We did actually have which I don't know if mentioned, we had a plaque off of the tower that had the floors and the flat numbers as well.
Right.
So we had a bit more structure into where we could identify people were.
Yeah, okay. And when you say he was writing what information they had on the board, you say flat numbers and floors. Any other information?
I believe it was numbers of persons as well.
Numbers of persons. Was there any information that you saw at that time that he was writing about what deployments had been made to those flats or those floors of BA wearers? No.
There was no structure as to what crews have been sent to from the bridgeheads to the people. No.
Okay, and we're going to explore this in some detail later, but just for the present, you say he was writing up what information they had. First of all, where, to your knowledge at the time, was that information coming from into the command unit? Where was it coming from?
That information, I believe, should have been coming from control. Control should have been contacting the incident command vehicle and passing fire survival guidance information through to them.
Right. And what was the mechanism by which that information was communicated from control to the command unit?
So then the command unit would answer the radio, and then they would get details of the person's name, if known, what floor they're in, what flat they're in, why they can't get out. Is there mobility issues? Have we got young children in there? Where is the smoke logging? Is it out in the hallway, or is it coming into the flat? Information like that would have been asked by control, and that information would have been passed to the incident command vehicle, who would record that on a form, and then that form would be kept with the command unit, and another one would be taken to the bridgehead. Right.
Just breaking that answer down. First of all, in terms of the type of information, you say that would happen, and you've set out a list of very detailed information. To your recollection, was that kind of detailed information actually what Norman Harrison himself was writing up? Was that available, that information?
When I got onto the command unit and Norman was he was writing things on the board, what he then had to do was then transfer that onto a bit of paper to make sure that he didn't have anything on the board that he didn't have on his bit of paper. Yeah, because we was going to take all that information to another unit. And when I looked at the papers, which I then stop him outside in the street, because I didn't want to go walking off to the other command unit and then we leave some of the stuff behind. I wanted to take it all with us. And I did get a bit official with him because and a bit, not angry, but I just wanted to make sure we had the things. Sorry.
Just take a moment.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. If you'd like to sit down for a minute, that would be perfectly right.
Oh, thank you. So I just wanted to make sure that anything that was on that command unit,
Yes.
we had in hard copy, and so that we could take it onto to the new command unit, which I think was CU7.
Okay.
So that we didn't miss or drop anybody's names, anybody's flats out of it. What we had is what we had, and from one unit to another unit.
Okay. Just to go back to my question again, in terms
Sorry.
of, it's okay. Just in terms of when you say what we had was what we had, was what you had sufficiently detailed in terms of conditions in the flat, people in the flat, conditions perhaps outside the flats, to be able to give the BA Wares good information to act on?
On some of the forms, there was information about where the smoke was in the hallway and why they couldn't get out. But the majority of the forms that were coming in that I've seen after, and there was so many.
Yeah. I know. Okay. Yeah. Just in terms of mechanics, can I just ask you about the mechanics of the communication? Would you like to have a break, do you think?
No, I'm okay.
You're okay. All right.
Thank you.
Just in terms of the mechanics, the information comes into the CU.
Yeah.
I think it's CU8. It comes in from the control room. How does that come in? Does it come in by radio, or does it come in through the vision log onto a screen, or what?
So it's coming through the mainstream radio.
Okay.
So the mainstream radio is going through from control to the command unit, and then they'll record them details. Because of the amount of calls that were coming in,
Yes.
I think, I know from when I was on the other command unit and when I was at the front of the tower, I was saying to the crew, sometimes we don't need all that information, because there was like a backlog of calls coming in. We needed to just get the names, where they were, what flat they was in, what floor they was in, and why they couldn't get out.
Yeah.
And so we could then make some sort of priority list.
Okay, I see. And in CU8, I think it's CU8 at this time when you joined, was there like a radio operator, somebody on the end of the radio and a pen in the other hand, writing down the details on these forms?
I didn't see the other operator. All I saw, as I got to the stairs of the command unit, walked up the stairs, and then Richard Welch just said to me, just sort of turned around and said, "I just need you to do fast fiber guidance." Norm was there with a whiteboard that he'd started to write stuff down, and all we've done is make sure that information he'd already had. He had all this paper. We took the aluminium sign, and we took that to CU7 to then start writing it all up in a logical fashion.
Do you remember how many FSGs, if I can call them that, were being dealt with when you were given responsibility by Group Manager Welch for being in charge of FSGs?
I couldn't really put a number on it. There was just a wad of paper.
Right.
It was. If I'm trying to picture, what he had in his hand, and when we started writing them up, what he had at that moment, it's been 20, 30 FSGs.
At that stage, was there a system in place when you started and you had this initial briefing with Group Manager Welch? Was there a system in place to verify, check whether the flats were clear after an FSG had been acted upon?
So once I get onto the CU7 and then introduce myself to the other guys and explain to him what we're here for and what I'm doing. Norman then tells me that he's got some fire survival guidance forms that have come into the command unit. He then tells me that there is another vehicle at the base of the tower that's taking fire survival guidance calls because control have had to contact other people. And he said he believes that they're passing that information from the base of the tower into the tower.
Right.
So I knew that information was getting to the tower, but I needed to go and find that structure and find out who was responsible for it.
So that information was actually just bypassing your command unit.
I think, yeah, because I think initially when the incident would have kicked off, there would have been a fire engine, a pump, would have been taking the FSG calls. What would then happen is when there's more resources turn up, the command unit would then try and take that off of them, and it was at that sort of changeover.
Right.
Yeah, so you still had the pump getting some calls, and then you also had the command unit getting some calls as well.
Yes, that's helpful, thank you.
At that early stage, when you were talking to Group Manager Welch about the system you were being given, did he give you any indication of how, if at all, FSG information was being given to other commanders on the ground?
As I said, I don't remember Richard Welch actually saying it to me, but when I got on the other command unit and Norm gave me a brief of what information he had, he must have had a conversation with Richard.
Okay. So that then I think takes us to the next paragraph of your statement. Group Manager Welch informed me that Command Unit 7 would be assigned to fire survival guidance, and he told me to go there to set it up. And then you explain what happened next, and then you say in the last sentence, Watch Manager Norman Harrison and I left the command unit to make our way over to CU7, which is about 200 yards away. Now, just so I'm clear, you'd been in CU8, I think, and you went to CU7, 200 yards away. Where was CU7 in relation to the tower?
So CU7 was actually on the approach road, so it was a lot nearer the tower.
Yeah. Right.
So in effect, 100 yards from the base of the tower.
Okay. And can you remember whereabouts? You say on the approach road.
Yeah,
to the southeast of the tower.
So at the front of the I'm sorry, I don't know the names of the roads, but so at the front of the tower, I believe it's the road that approaches it, and then we was parked on the right-hand side, and then as the door opened, you could see the tower and what was going on.
Okay. And you, in the next paragraph, you say that you asked Norman Harrison, how many people have we got? And he tells me. And then you say, I said to Norman Harrison, make me a list of everything we've got. I was a fisher, so I just wanted it done. We needed to get a starting point and put a structure in place. And then you say at the end, we needed to prioritise the people we had to help and also avoid duplication. So, and what did Norman Harrison then do in response to that command?
So it gave him a structure. He didn't waffle. He just gave me a structure. I asked him how many people. I wanted to know how many people he had. I didn't want anything else, other information. My thought process was I want to know how many people we've got, and then find out where they are, and then sort of cross-reference everything to make sure we had the right number of people in the right flats.
Okay. And then you say in the next paragraph that you and he went into CU7, where you met watch managers Dan Merrick and Tony Peckham. They were CU staff taking FSG calls. So, just pausing there, do you know how long they had been taking FSG calls from Brigade Command, Brigade Control?
No, I'm sorry, I don't.
Right. So, was it, to your way of thinking, did you see essentially two places on the fire ground, on the incident ground, receiving FSG calls from Brigade Control? CU8, where you'd just been, and CU7, where you're now arriving?
On CU7, Dan Merrick was on the phone, on the brigade mobile phone, and he was either writing it down or he was saying it aloud, and Tony Peckham was writing down what information it was.
Right.
That's what I mean with the fire survival guidance.
So, but how long did it take you to go from CU8 to CU7?
Not long. A minute, maybe, less than a minute.
Right. And was there a system whereby brigade control were going to stop sending messages to CU8, FSG messages to CU8, and start sending them to CU7?
No, we needed to... From me taking it over and moving to a different command unit, the FSG calls were still going to that base pump that was at the base of the tower.
Right.
So information was still going through, and then it's only once we had CU7 up that when we were speaking to control, I asked Dan Merritt to just let them know that we was dealing with the fire survival guidance.
Right. But you and Norman Harrison had now left CU8, but is this right? They were still taking FSG information from brigade control, even though you'd left.
So yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if they was taking the radio operator on CU8. I'm assuming got some information for fire survival guidance calls and put it onto CU.
Right.
Gave it to Norman.
Before you left CU8, did you take any steps, or did anybody take any steps to tell brigade control to stop sending FSG to CU8 and start sending them to CU7 instead?
No.
So is it possible that in fact brigade control was still sending FSG messages to CU8 even though you, who are now in charge of FSG calls, had left to go to CU7?
That is possible that they still would have sent the messages to CU8.
Right.
I'm not aware of any.
And who would be handling those messages at CU8 once you'd left to set up CU7?
Whoever, there would have been a radio operator on CU8 that I didn't see, but they would have sent it to CU8. And if they couldn't, in control, if they couldn't get a response from CU8 on the radio, they would call up another appliance or another command unit to pass that information on to.
Right. But what would happen, to the best of your knowledge, if an FSG message was sent to CU8 after you'd left to go and set up your system? What would happen to that message? How would that?
Well, they would have recorded.
How would that be processed?
The radio operator would record it on the form,
right,
the casualty form, and then that would have been brought to CU7. If that would have happened, if Command Unit 8 would have received a call, they would have passed that information on to CU7.
And when you got to CU7 and set up your system, did you actually then receive any paper messages from CU8 of FSG calls
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And then looking back at the paragraph which says Norman Harrison and I went to CU7, you say watch managers Dan Merrick and Tony Peckham were taking, they were CU staff taking FSG calls. Do you know how long they'd been taking FSG calls for before you'd arrived?
No, I don't.
Do you know how many calls they'd taken, just roughly in terms of volume, before you'd arrived?
No, I couldn't. Honestly, I couldn't put a number on it. I'm going to put a number on it, aren't I?
No, just in many few.
It could have been 10 calls.
Okay.
They were stressed. They knew what was going on, and they also knew that this. Once we said about this base pump has got the fire survival guidance calls, they were aware of that.
Right. So
it wasn't just a case of we've got sort of 30 fire survival. They knew that there was absolutely loads of them.
When you say base pump, do you mean G271? Which had been the incident command pump initially.
Yeah, and there was appliances at the base of the tower. One of them appliances was taking fire survival guidance calls, and the driver of that vehicle was giving it to a watch manager who was leaning over the car bonnet, writing it down, checking it, and when I went to see him, which is a bit later on, he had so much paperwork where they'd taken so many calls.
Right.
I think in my contemporaneous notes I do know his name, but I didn't when I wrote my statement, if that
Okay,
makes
well,
sense.
we're going to come to that.
Oh, okay.
At the moment, I'm just trying to get a handle on what the channels
Right.
of fire survival guidance calls were from brigade control. So we've got them going into CU8, we've got them going into CU7. It looks like at the same time, and you've now mentioned a third appliance. Can I just see if I can pin that down with
Right.
you? If you go to the ORR, Mr. Documents Director, please, and go to page 60. I just want to show you an entry in this document. Now, Mr. Egan, this document is a report put together by the London Fire Brigade of the first hour of the fire, and it was put together this May based on a whole lot of information. And so you won't be familiar with it, but can I just show you something against the timestamp 01:35:36? I'm sorry, 01:35:54 at the bottom of the page. Golf 261, Acton's pump ladder, interrupt the CRO attempting to pass the radio message to Golf 271, North Kensington pump ladder, saying they will take the priority message on behalf of Golf 271, North Kensington's pump ladder, who have not responded. Now, this is, I think, before you arrive, but at any time did you learn that Golf 261, Acton's pump ladder, was taking FSG information in place of the incident command pump?
No, I didn't know the station's pump ladder. I just knew that there was a pump or pump ladder at the base of the tower that was taking fire survival guidance calls.
Okay, let's just turn over, just at the bottom of page 60, it says Golf 261, Acton's pump ladder are still on their way, and over the page, to the incident, and they state they will pass on the information to Golf 271. And then you can see in the next paragraph, during the phone conversation that Officer Norman had at 01:35:24 with CU8, the CRO can be heard sending information to Golf 261, Acton's pump ladder. So having shown you that, and it says there have now been two methods by which FSG calls information have been passed to the incident ground. And the two methods looks like CU8 and 261. My question, having shown you that, is when you were at CU8, or indeed when you arrived at CU7, did anybody tell you that in addition to FSG information going to CU8, FSG information was going to Acton's pump ladder 261?
I knew information would be going to a pump, to a base pump, but I didn't know what
it was.
pump name or number. I knew it would be going to a pump.
Okay, and so when you come into CU7, you can see CU7 staff taking FSG calls, as you say on page 3 of your statement in the third paragraph down, if we go back to it. So does that mean that at that point there were 3 destinations on the fireground for FSG calls? CU8, Acton's pump ladder 261 and CU7 all at the same time?
It would appear like that. Like I'm saying, but with regards to CU7, the operator was taking the calls on the phone, which isn't the correct policy. It should be all done by the fireground radio.
Right.
So I think it's just
Okay.
My opinion is control would have phoned up CU7 to try and find out what's going on. Is anyone else?
Okay.
And they've passed information while they're there.
Right. So when you got to CU7, what did you do next?
So I got to CU7, I introduced myself, said to them what our priorities were. I said to Norm had all the information. I said what we need to do is we need to transpose all that information onto a whiteboard. We can work out the floors, we can work out the flat numbers because we had the sheet. We need to start prioritising who we've got.
And did you do that?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Okay.
So we started doing that, and then I think my timeline gets a bit weird because I then make a decision to go down to where the base pump is and to find out where this communication is going. So at least I can see people and I can visualise who I'm talking to. So I go to the base and that's where I meet a watch manager on a car bonnet that's taking fire survival guidance calls.
Okay. Okay. So before we look at that, can I just ask you, you decide, you say, to go to the base pump.
Yeah.
Did anybody tell you at that time that there was a base pump below the tower taking FSG information? Or
I'm sure Norm said that there is one at the base of the tower where it is, but even still, I would know that there would be a machine at the base of the tower, or at where the main seat of fire is, because they would have been getting fire survival guidance calls. Somebody there, just by looking around, I would have found somebody that was dealing with it.
Right. Okay, and is that because? Sorry, let me ask it in a different way. Why would you think that there would be, in the normal course of things, a pump close to the seat of the fire, as you say, dealing with FSG calls, where, in circumstances where there was already at least one and now two command units on the fire ground?
Because pumps get there before the command units, so it's the pumps get past that information. A command unit will be all the pumps and the pump ladders will be sent on the initial. When there's further calls, then we decide to send the command unit. So they're en route and the pumps are there. Right. So it's a bit like on that, is it the CRO you showed? And it says Acton's intercept this message, because even though they're still en route, they're helping them out. They're saying, well, they're obviously really busy. I can take that information because I'm going to be there in a moment. Right. So they can write it down en route.
And would it be normal to have FSG calls still going to a pump which had arrived early in the incident once a command unit was in place?
It was unprecedented, wasn't it?
Okay.
Yeah, so normally you might get 3 or 4, probably maximum fire survival guidance calls, and they would go to the pump, and then the command unit would come in place, and then you'd put a command unit that would deal with fire survival guidance. We'd send a message to control to say, we're now dealing with the fire survival guidance. This was just, one machine could not handle the number of calls for fire survival guidance, so it was control done a great job to spread the calls out, so at least somebody somewhere was writing that down and they got that information together in one single place.
I understand. Okay. Okay, you go on then at the foot of page 3. Foot of page 3 to say, at around 1:30 a.m, as I was approaching the tower, I could see a watch manager working on a car bonnet. Just first of all, that time there, do you think that's right, that time?
It's probably not, no. I apologise.
You were approaching the tower, I could see a watch manager working on a car bonnet. I cannot recall his name. And you explained you went up to him and he was collating information on a car bonnet. There were papers everywhere and I could see a lot of activity. You say, I told him who I was and I was there to support him. He told me what he was doing. He was receiving information from his driver, who was filling in carbonated casualty forms based on information from the control room, received over the main radio. And you go on to describe what was happening. Could you just clarify for us where you thought that watch manager was getting the information from?
The watch manager was getting information off of a firefighter that was coming out of the driver's position on the vehicle.
On the which vehicle?
Of the pump, or the pump ladder that was there. A firefighter was getting off of the machine, out of the driver's seat, and walking around to the to this car bonnet with sometimes 2 or 3 casualty report forms.
I see. I follow. So the fire survival guidance call that driver was collating with the watch manager was fire survival guidance information coming to that pump, was it?
Yes, and from control to that pump.
Right. And from anywhere else? Just that? Or
No,
just that pump?
just from there.
I see. Okay. And did the driver physically bring the forms in his hand to the watch manager?
Yes.
And was he going back and forth?
He was, yes.
Okay. And what was the watch manager physically doing with these pieces of paper on the car bonnet? Do you remember?
So what the watch manager was trying to split the forms up so there'd be one to go to the Bridgehead and one to go to stay with himself, or later on, so that I would then take it. But that information, when I spoke to him, he was giving that information to, he believed, I think it was watch manager D'Souza, who was at the Bridgehead.
Okay. What was the role of these forms? You described these forms that were being filled in, or brought by the driver to the watch manager.
So the forms will say what flat number they're in, what floor they're in, how many people are there, and so quite a few of the forms would say if there was any mobility or vulnerability issues, if there were small children in there. So you know, on the whole, that's just information. It's 5 people in that flat, but what we had to do later on is which was hard, was to prioritise.
Just
Okay. Do you want
pause for a second.
take your time, Mr. Egan? Would you like a break?
No, I'm okay, thank you.
Yeah, but do indicate if you would.
Yeah, I will. Thank you very much. We had to prioritise, didn't we? So, so where it was 5 people, we then had to, you know, if it was small children, babies, they were the priority because of respiratory. If they were vulnerable mobility issues, then we would use that because they wouldn't be able to get out under their own resources, would they? So that's how I was prioritising what we did.
And just to ask you a boring paper question, if I can, could I ask you to look at policy bundle tab 5? And I want to show you what is a standard form, control information form. We'll just see whether that's what you're talking about, if I can. If you go, please, to Appendix 2, which is on the internal page 8 of Policy 790, Fire Survival Guidance Calls. Is that the form that you saw the watch manager handling on the car bonnet?
Yes, it is, yeah.
And what was... Okay, so this is it what the driver was physically bringing to the watch manager?
Yeah.
And they were... the driver had filled those in, had he?
The driver had filled them in, and to be honest, they yeah, that form looks quite pretty and neat, and there's spaces to write names and things. They weren't that neat and tidy. It was quite bullet pointy. This is what we've got, and as far as I was concerned, that was fine.
Right. Thank you. And then the watch manager he did something with those pieces of paper. What did he do? Do you remember?
So the watch manager was splitting them. So I think it says there where they, well, it says the different colours, but I think there's a key at the bottom that says where they're supposed to go. But he was trying to split them up, but because there was so many of them and it was difficult to get into the tower, he was passing the information on to, I believe it was the watch manager D'Souza, and there was either a crew manager or a watch manager as well that was at the base of the tower. So I believe the watch manager D'Souza was at the Bridgehead.
Yes.
And he was and so the pump outside, this Golf 261, for example, passed that information into the tower, and then that information was being passed to the Bridgehead.
Okay, so let me see if I've got this right. Tell me if I've got any of this wrong, because I'm not here to tell you what happened. So it's the other way around. So the information comes from control to the pump. The driver writes it down onto the form. The driver takes the form and takes it to the watch manager on the car bonnet.
Yeah.
The watch manager on the car bonnet then gives it to a crew manager or watch manager, and he then takes it to Louisa da Silva at the Bridgehead.
Louisa da Silva.
Is that I don't want to put words in your
Right,
mouth at
okay,
all, but
so-
have I summarised what you've told us?
That's what happened on the night.
Yes, on the night. Yes.
Yeah. But can I just add that
Please do.
in real terms, in a smaller incident, that you wouldn't have so many people involved in handing that piece of information. It's just that same thing, that the guy that was taking that information, so the driver's just busy writing, isn't he? He would usually just take that to the Bridgehead and give that information in to whoever was doing the fire survival guidance. There was so much information, he couldn't get away from the radio, so he had to give it to someone else to collate it.
Right.
That person's now got that information, and they're trying to talk to, and I couldn't remember, but it's Louisa da Silva, but she's now got committed. I'm assuming she's got other things to do as well, committing BA crews, briefing, trying to control the scene up there. So there's another element of somebody getting all that information off of him, because it wasn't safe to keep. They couldn't just get a form and get into the tower. It took a little while to manage to get in. So normally we wouldn't have that many people in the chain, but for that situation there was so much coming through, they tried to at least hand it over in small chunks for people to deal with, rather than watch Manager to Silver. We've now got 15 fire survival guidance calls, boom, boom, boom. It would have just been overload.
Now, in terms of collation of the information that the watch manager on the car bonnet was doing, he was getting the information from the driver in the pump, and then what was he doing with it? Was he prioritising it?
I don't think he was. I don't think he was prioritising it. I think he was trying to keep the forms in a structured way. So it was by what floor they was on. So when he handed it over, there would be, rather than just flicking through the whole lot, there'd be some sort of structure in there.
I see. Okay. Did you see him do that?
I seen him trying to fiddle with the forms, and I said to him, just get the information to the tower. I was going to go into the tower to find out if I could see what was going on, and so that people could see me, and then I would then come out, and then once that chain of command had been, they knew that I was now taking over the fire survival guidance, I could then relieve these guys of doing the fight, from the pump and writing it down, because we had a command unit.
Yes. And did you have a conversation with the watch manager at the car bonnet about?
At the car bonnet, I did, yes.
And what was the upshot of that conversation?
The car bonnet, the watch manager, to be honest, and the driver were more than happy to hand it over. They just wanted to get sets on. That was their words to me. They wanted to do something, even though I said how good they were doing. So I spoke to them.
Okay, take your time.
They'd done a good job, but they wanted to be more hands-on.
Right.
So once the walk through, communicated with the people that were there. I didn't get up to watch manager Sousa when I went into the tower. I called her on the radio, and there was no response. But the radio was manic.
Okay. Mr. Egan, thank you. We're going to take a break now, I think, for you for a few minutes. Mr. Chairman,
that would suit you, Mr. Millett, would it?
It's important that the witness has a break, I think. So, should we? I'm in your hands, Mr. Chairman. 5 or 10. Would 5 or 10 minutes?
I think it would be
For
sensible.
the witness to clear his
Should we all
head.
have a break,
Yeah.
Mr. Egan? Be a good idea. Yeah. All right, we'll stop for 10 minutes and come back at 5 to 3. Is that right?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
If we could have the witness back, please. Thank you.
Thanks,
All right
Chair.
to go on, Mr. Egan?
Yeah, thank you.
No, we can have another break any time you think it would be helpful.
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Egan. Mr. Egan, can I just take a step back a moment in time slightly and go to the time when you were instructed by Group Manager Welch to take over the FSG role? Who had been running the FSG function before that? Do you remember?
No, I don't. I'm unaware of if anyone was actually taking control of the fire survival guidance.
Did anybody tell you that Brett Loft, a station manager called Brett Loft, had been operating the fire survival guidance system until then?
No, I was unaware of that.
Right. So can I take it that there was no handover from Mr. Loft to you?
Yeah, no, it's no handover.
Going back to your description of this chain of communication of fire survival guidance material from the car bonnet to the bridgehead, just explain to me precisely how that was happening. I think you said it was a crew manager or watch manager running it into the tower.
No, so the information, so from the car bonnet, they were collating all the information. So the watch manager was there. The watch manager was then on the radio to a crew manager or a watch manager that was at the base of the tower, inside the tower. Yeah?
Right, okay.
So actually inside the building. And that person was then passing the information onto the bridgehead.
Okay, so that's the bit I didn't get.
Sorry.
So from the car bonnet to just inside the tower,
Yep.
that's a radio connection, is it?
Yes.
I see, okay.
Yeah.
Which radio channel was it? Do you know?
No. I'm assuming it was probably Channel 1. I changed it to, I believe I changed it all to Channel 3 in the end because of radio traffic.
Yes, and you say that in your contemporary notes, in fact.
Oh, okay.
Would there have been difficulties in communicating even that short distance by radio on Channel 1 at the time?
There would have been. The radio traffic was huge.
Was
because
that why?
every firefighter's got and everyone wants to help each other and they're calling each other up. So you've got to find a space to jump in.
And with this system, the car bonnet system, if I can call it that, in relation to the information coming from brigade control to that pump and then into the tower through that system, do you remember whether there was any information that came back to the watch manager on the car bonnet from inside the tower?
There wasn't any information that came back from the tower. He was just passing that on. I do remember asking, what have we got back? Who's come out? And he was unaware of what information. What he done. I'm sure he said, whoever comes out has to come past me anyway. It was that. So he wasn't really that worried that nothing had come back because he was saying, I'll catch them when they come past.
Right. So if a deployment in response to an FSG message which had gone into the tower was, for example, unsuccessful, was there at that stage a system whereby that information would be passed back to brigade control via the car bonnet and the pump?
No. So in a typical scenario, the information would be given to a BA crew to go to flat X. They would then go there, and then that information, if they've got the person out, that information would then go back to the person that was dealing with fire survival guidance, so they could tick them off that flat is now completed. Through the whole incident, we didn't get any information back.
So how would brigade control be able to monitor the successful failure of FSGs and the quality of the information or advice that they were giving to callers?
So my understanding is control stay on the line whilst the line is still live and that they can hear people at the other end. I don't know how that works with regards to the number of calls, so the number of lines they've got coming in, and when the lines go quiet, or if the line, I think if the line goes dead, then they have to just leave that call. It drops out, you know, if it was a mobile phone, it dropped out a signal or something, they would then leave that call. I don't know, because Control have got their own procedures of how they deal with things, I don't know if they would then contact that number. I don't know. But with regards to Control, they give us the information, we send a crew, they go and get the person, they bring the person out, we then tell Control that we've now cleared that flat.
And was there a system at that point whereby information was being communicated back to Control that the message that had been sent to the Bridgehead had gone to the Bridgehead and a deployment had been made?
No, but we wouldn't send that message anyway. We wouldn't take the call from Control and then tell them that we're now sending someone there. I'm not 100% sure now, actually. Just thinking about it now, I think the policy says that we should say that we should send a message to say that we've deployed crews to the flat in question. But that wouldn't have taken place because we didn't have there was so many calls coming in that we couldn't say that and then we didn't know what information was being sent from the Bridgehead, which crews were going to which flat.
Yes. Well, can I ask you just to look at policy, since you mentioned it? Can I ask you to be shown policy 790, which is in policy bundle tab 5, and to look at paragraph 9, communication with Control. And it's on internal page 5. If I can just ask paragraph 9.1 to be highlighted, it says, it is vital that Control is kept informed of the actions being taken to resolve each FSG call. The fact that Control is aware of the actions being carried out on the incident ground will greatly enhance the advice given to FSG callers. And then in 9.3, the outcome of every FSG call must be communicated to Control. Now, Mr. Egan, in the light of that policy, what, if any, steps were being taken in relation to the system, the car bonnet system, which we're focusing on at the moment, to ensure that Control was being kept informed of actions being taken to resolve the FSG calls that were being sent into the tower through that system?
Control were not kept up to date as to what action was being taken. The number of calls that were coming in, they were passing us the information. They knew that we was being snowed under with the number of calls that we had. No information that I'm aware of went back to Control to say that we sent a specific crew to a certain flat.
And would it follow then that, similarly, the outcome of every FSG call wasn't being communicated to Control?
Not via mainstream radio. When I was on the Command Unit 7, there was a telephone call with Control, and I did say to them, you know, we're prioritising what we've got. We've given that to the Bridgehead, and they're committing crews.
Okay.
That's. I think it was just a given that all efforts were being made. If you gave us an FSG, all efforts were being made to get to that person.
I understand. Now, if you follow your statement over to the top of page 5, I'm going to summarise it. You went back to the car bonnet watch manager and you told him that everything would now go through CU. That's effectively what you say in that paragraph.
Yes.
Would that mean, what would that mean for communication of FSG advice? How would, we put the question a slightly different way, how would pushing it all through the CU improve matters?
Purely because we would have had the staff on there to deal with that, to be able to log it, and then we'd communicate it through, whereas, you know, it just seemed that was the dedicated machine that was going to deal with that information, and it would be sort of right and proper that you'd have a command unit dealing with fire survival guidance calls.
And what did that watch manager do in response to your telling him that everything will now go through the CU?
As I mentioned, they were really pleased. They gave me all the information that he had in his hands. We made sure that nothing was left behind, and they went off to. I'm sure they just went off to get sets.
Do you know whether Brigade Control were told to stop sending FSG messages to the pump, the driver from which was sending these messages to the car bonnet?
No, I did ask for the command unit to contact Control to confirm that we're dealing with the fire survival guidance.
Okay. And to the best of your recollection, did that succeed?
At the best of my knowledge, it did, yes.
Right. Did you have any radio communications with the Bridgehead at that stage? In other words, at the stage when you started operations up in the CU?
No, I tried to get through on the radio a couple of times, well, more than a couple of times, numerous times, and there was no response. There was so much radio traffic. Right.
And once you'd started up on CU7, what happened to FSG calls coming in, or which had been coming in on CU8? Do you remember?
I can't remember any calls. Once we was on Command Unit 7, I don't remember any paperwork coming from CU8 saying this is a fire survival guidance call.
Okay. Now there was a firefighter called Thomas Goodall, who I think was involved in fire survival guidance calls.
Yeah, he's the group manager, so
yes.
he was ordered to take over from me. So there was a higher level of command.
On which CU?
On CU7.
That was when? Later?
That was a little bit later,
okay.
yeah.
All right, we may have to come back to that. Going back, if I can, in your statement a little bit to paragraph 2 on page 4. This is at the time, and I'm sorry to go back in time, but just wanted to see if I could put a time on it. This is at a time when you're describing the car bonnet watch manager. You say at the end of the first main paragraph, you say, at that point, the advice from control room to callers was the standard stay put advice. And then you describe what that advice was. How did you know that the advice being given by the control room to callers was stay put at that stage?
Because that's the procedure. That's what we do. That's how we deal with incidents. We have the stay put policy in place, and the fire survival guidance is, that you stay where you are. We will send crews to come and get you and to bring you out.
Okay.
Perhaps I made an assumption that, if it wasn't in place, then we wouldn't be sending crews, because we'd be putting crews at risk then while people are coming out.
So my question was, I think you've answered my question, but another way of asking it was, did anybody tell you at the time that the advice being given by the control room to callers was stay put?
No. Not in that early stage.
Okay. Now, we talked about Group Manager Goodall a moment ago. If you go to page 5 of your statement again, we pick up the story where you've come back to CU7 and you say, I gave the pictures I had taken to them, and they started writing it up on the whiteboards, putting down all the flat numbers and what we knew about them. Now, I just want to ask you about those pictures. Can I ask you to be shown, please, Exhibit 5 to your exhibits, which is Mr. Documents Director. It's MET 0001564. Is what we've got on the screen there one of the photographs that you're referring to?
Not there, no. That's a photo from later on.
That's a photo from later on. Right, okay.
It's like a yellowish one.
Okay, can I ask you to be shown DEG 4, which is MET 000156636? Is that one of the photographs that you...
No.
No? Right, okay, well...
It is one of my photos, but
yes, okay. So I think then, by process of elimination by me, we're only left with one set of photographs I think I can take you to, and these are the photographs you took on the wall in the Bridgehead.
That's right, yeah.
It's my fault for confusing myself. But that I think is DEG 1. Can we just look at that? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that was at the inside the tower,
right,
on the ground floor.
Okay, now I'm going to come back to the detail of what these show later. But just in terms of those photographs, you say you'd started writing it up on the whiteboards, putting down all the flat numbers and what we knew about them. Just in terms of looking at that information on the screen and taking, I know it's invidious to take flat numbers and floors at random, but let's start with the top one. Could you just read across what we have there?
So we have a BA with a teacher's tick.
Right.
F205, so I assume a flat number. 205, and on the 23rd floor.
Right. And then what?
And UK.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
Right. And then there's something on the right, which I don't think the photograph captures. Do you know what that might be?
No.
It may be that there's another picture which isn't terribly good, which might help. If you go to Exhibit 2, which is MET 000156639, just the documents direct, we may be able to see it better or worse, I don't know. Maybe better.
Okay.
We can see there that this is now FSG at 215, and you've got this UK, and then can you help us about what that says? Something, is that something at door? What does that say? This isn't your handwriting.
No, it isn't, no.
FR, it looks like at door 213, flames out window 215, people on roof 216. Can you help us interpret that? To the best of your recollection, does that reflect what was happening?
No, I'm unaware. I think those comments didn't... When I asked the person that was standing there with them, with the other information, they weren't aware of what these comments were.
Right. You say in your statement you've taken these photographs well, let me just ask you, where did you take these photographs?
So when I went into the base of the tower the first time, these were on the wall.
Yes.
So I couldn't get in touch with the person at the Bridgehead, the watch manager. So I spoke to the crew manager, or it could have been a watch manager that was doing temporary. And I tried to find out what information he knew. So as far as he was concerned, this was the flat numbers and what floor they was on. But if you go back to the other photo that says the BA, and
yes.
So I said to him, well, what have we done about it then? So we've got their BA, a tick to flat, so have we been there? And his answer was he didn't know. So I said to him, you've got ones there without a tick. Now, does that mean that we've sent BA there, and the one with a tick means that we've sent BA there and we've cleared it? But he just didn't know.
Right.
He just had that information that was being passed through from the car bonnet.
Right. So I was going to ask you that. First of all, just to be very clear, these photographs were taken, or this photograph was taken by you.
Yes.
You say in the last paragraph on page 4 in the middle that you took a photo of the wall. That wall is, I think, in the foyer, you say, on the ground
Yes.
floor. Is that right?
Yes.
This is not the Bridgehead.
No, it's not the Bridgehead, no.
Right. And who was writing that up on the wall?
The crew manager that was standing there.
Right. And was that the crew manager who was in radio contact with the car bonnet man?
With the car bonnet man.
Right. So the information that was being written up on the wall had come from the car bonnet, as it were.
I believe so, yeah.
Right, and had not come from the Bridgehead.
No. That information there would have been radioed through to the guy that was standing at the base of the tower, and he would have recorded the very basic information that was there. So flat 205 on the 23rd floor.
Right.
Then that information should be then passed to the Bridgehead. And I think the idea behind it is that where the BA is that they committed BA to them,
Yes.
or he believes that they committed BA to there. And I'm then going to make an assumption that the tick means that he got feedback to say that, or whoever done the original drawing, got feedback to say that the BA team have been there.
Right. And the feedback, and you may not know the answer to this, but let's see how far we get. The feedback tick, whether it's cleared or whatever it means, had that come, by which route had that come to that watch manager or crew manager? Had it come from the Bridgehead direct back down to him, or had it gone from the Bridgehead to brigade control, back round to the pump, back to the car bonnet, and back by radio to the foyer?
The assumption is that the information would have been passed from the base of the tower to the Bridgehead. The Bridgehead would have then confirmed whether they'd sent BA or not, and the guy at the bottom would have ticked it.
Stop there. Where would he have known? Where would he have got the information from?
From the Bridgehead.
Direct from the Bridgehead, do you
Yes.
think? Right. And how would that have been communicated?
It would have been communicated by radio, but this is all hypothetical.
Well,
because when I asked him what did that mean, he didn't know.
Okay.
So when I go back to the command unit, I have to treat all those flats as live, as if we've got to go to it. Yeah. So I think the process was a good idea, but there was we lost some sort of communication in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. That I think, even though what you're describing is difficult, I think you've been very clear so far in what you've described to us. So we then go back to page 5, CU7, and the pictures that you've taken, you give to the CU7 staff, and you say they start writing it up on the whiteboards. And we've got some photographs of those now. And I think those photographs of the whiteboards are where I wanted to take you earlier, DEG 5. Is that
Sorry,
right?
yeah. Can I just
Yes.
interject? The one that you're going to show with all the grid,
Yes.
okay, isn't initially what I had the crews doing. I had them sort of doing a list form of the floors and the flats, and it's when Group Manager Tom Goodall come up, he was the one that said, right, let's get this grid format, we'll put all the flat numbers on there, and then it'll be a lot better to see.
Okay, so let me see if I can just put that in pictorial form. If you could be shown DEG 5, which is MET 000015634, is that the list that you started making on the whiteboards based on, in CU7, based on what information?
No, that's a photo near the in the latter stages of the incident when we was working out who we'd rescued or who had left the premises. The one with the grids on the next picture.
It is. So it is from the latter stages of the incident.
That is the latter stages of the incident. And
But did your initial whiteboarding, as it were, look like that?
no.
Oh, I see.
No,
Right.
no, sorry. That's where we found information of where people were. That's the flats of the people we got.
So you then say that in the same paragraph, that Tom Goodall came over and informed us he was taking over fire survival guidance. And how long after you had been at CU7 did that happen? Do you think?
It felt like forever, to be honest.
Right.
But it probably wasn't. But because we'd set something up, I'd gone to the tower, came back. I think I went back to the base of the tower again, and then I came back, and then I think that's when Tom Goodall was there to take over.
Yes. Okay. Now we have him on scene, Tom Goodall on scene at about 2:04 a.m. And you also go on to say that in the next paragraph, station manager Pete Wolfenden turned up, and we have him on scene at about 2:12 a.m.
Okay.
So in terms of this discussion, did this discussion happen around about that time, or later than that, do you think?
Yeah, so when Tom Goodall came up, this is where your mind plays tricks on time. So Tom Goodall's turned up, and Pete Wolfenden, as Tom Goodall was talking, Pete Wolfenden is walking down towards the tower. So they may have turned up at the time that you said, but then there's still that delay in them getting briefed of what's going to happen. But they sort of were about the same time.
Do you know, or do you recall that the fire was declared a major incident?
I did hear it later on that it was declared a major incident. During the incident, I heard that it had been made a major incident.
Right. Now we have a time of that at 02:06. Did your conversation with Tom Goodall, when he came over and took over fire survival guidance, was that before or after the incident had been declared a major incident?
So I can't recall when I found out.
Okay. Then you go on in the second paragraph on page 5, if I can just ask you to look at it, to describe how you were told to transfer the information that you'd taken to a grid system where each row was a floor. You say, then we could see who we had in there. We got this up and running quite quickly. I took photographs with my mobile phone of these boards. And I think probably third time lucky. Can I ask you please to look at DEG 4, please. Just to look at that. Is that what you're referring to?
It is, yes.
Right. And how long did it take to get that up and running, you think?
It was very quick. It was the guys didn't mess about. They got that up. They transferred it over while still taking calls coming in.
Okay. You then say in the last paragraph on page 5 of your statement, I said the advice was still to stay put, but I said we needed to get the residents out. Who did you say that to?
I think I say it to Tom Goodall. I'm just thinking why it's in the context of that.
Well, let's look at the wider context. The paragraph before is where you refer to Pete Wolfenden turning up. And then you explained to Tom Goodall what you had, a firefighter at the base of the tower on the car bonnet, passing information to someone inside the tower, relaying it to the Bridgehead to deploy BA crews. You say you decided you would take that process over. So that's the context.
Okay.
So to repeat the question, who did you tell that you needed to get the residents out?
Tom Goodall.
Tom Goodall. And did he react?
Tom Goodall went to the command unit that was the incident command vehicle to discuss the stay put policy, I'm led to believe. Because I don't know if it's, I don't think it is in my statement. It might be a little bit later on. One of the phone calls happens is from control that Dan Merrick is holding, and Dan Merrick says to me that it's control. It's the officer of the watch of control, and they want to know the stable policy is still in place. Really, what's going on? Can we change it? So I made the comment to Dan to tell them that I'm telling people to get out of the building, but to change the policy or to change the procedure, they need to speak to the command officer in charge. I can't change that. Even though we're doing fire survival guidance, that isn't in my power to do that. So I told them that they had to contact the incident command vehicle.
And who was the incident commander at that stage? You know.
I'm sorry, I don't know who the incident commander was. I know it was Andy Rowe at the end. I believe it was Richard Welch when I attended, and I believe it to be Andy Rowe at the end of the incident. I didn't hear who was in charge at DAC level, or if a DAC level took over.
Just backing up a little bit to the first sentence of this paragraph, I said the advice was still to stay put, but I said we needed to get the residents out. You said that to Tom Goodall, and then he went to speak to the incident command pump, I think is what you said.
Yeah, sorry.
Do you know who he spoke to at the incident command
I don't
pump?
know.
Did he tell you what his view was about whether the stay put advice should be changed at that stage?
He agreed that it should be evacuation.
Right. At roughly what kind of time was it that Tom Goodall went to speak to the incident commander to communicate his view and yours that the stay put advice should be changed?
I'm sorry, I'm just really bad with times. It just... When Tom took over, we had I gave him a brief of what we had, what we was doing. Tom was very good with regards to, we carry on with what we're doing, the way we're prioritising it, but let's get it onto this board. And then, I'm not sure if I had the conversation with him then about what we need, and this is my opinion, what I believe we needed to do. We needed to just evacuate the building because we weren't getting anything back with regards to what information we was putting through. They was obviously under the cost. The guys up there, you could tell just by looking at the building, that everybody's lives were in danger. Residents, firefighters, everybody, and it was a case of they just needed to get out. That was my opinion, and I am the station manager, and I can sort of challenge a little bit above, and I can give comments and that, but I can't make them decisions.
Do you know roughly how long after the fire had been declared a major incident that Tom Goodall went to have this conversation with the incident commander about changing the stay put advice?
No, I'm sorry, I don't. Sorry.
Did it occur to you as usual or unusual that the incident would have been declared a major incident, but the stay put advice was still stay put and hadn't been changed?
No, because the major incident is to deal with the resources, to sort of bring the incident to a safe conclusion. Where I'm focused purely on the fire survival guidance side of it, I'm not focusing on the other 101 things that the incident commander's got to think of, what they've got to manage. So the time frame is I'm probably a bit tunnel vision on what I'm dealing with, and for a major incident, you could tell that we needed resources. That's like a no-brainer. I think that was a good call. really. The stay put policy and the stay put of, in my opinion, it should have been changed. We should have started doing things to get them out. But then also, I don't know what the BA crews were doing. I just hands up. I don't know. They could have been doing that.
At the foot of page 11, if we just look at it together, Mr. Egan, you say, having described your discussions with Tom Goodall about stay put and his trip to the incident commander, you say, I said the same thing to Station Manager Pete Wolfenden over the radio, which could be widely heard. I also said it in the command unit. Did Pete Wolfenden acknowledge?
Just a minute, Mr. Millett. I think you got the wrong page. I think you said 11. You probably meant 5.
I did mean 5. I'm so sorry.
I was getting through it real quick.
I've been...
Caught us all out. I think we're on the right one now.
Thank you very much. I've been too task focused, I think. At the foot of page 5 of 11, you say, I said the same thing to SM Pete Wolfenden over the radio, which could be widely heard. I also said it in the command unit. Mr. Egan, my question is, did Pete Wolfenden acknowledge what you were saying over the radio?
He did, yes.
Did he agree with you?
And he agreed, yes.
Right. Do you know what he did about it?
Pete Wolfenden ended up was now sort of the conduit for the information coming from the command unit to the base of the tower, and then that information for fire survival guidance to go to the Bridgehead.
Right.
So Pete Wolfenden was trying to put pressure on the Bridgehead commander to not only sort of get crews in, but to go to the specific flats that we needed to go to.
And you say here that you had thought that it was the right thing to do to overrule the stay put advice. What advice did you think should be given instead to residents who were on fire survival guidance calls?
So whilst on the unit, we would have members of the public would be managed to get through and they'd be asking for our help, they'd be on the phone. We had police officers there that have got people asking them. And my advice to them was, for them, if they're on the phone to the people, is to get out of the building. Because, and I know it was against what they should have been doing, or what they were told to do, but, if in the situation, I told them to get out. So I was doing what I felt was right.
Right. And did you know anything about how they would get out?
No, I tried to advise some of the people by saying, you've got to keep low. Yeah. And I did speak to somebody on the phone, and I was just trying to be calm, saying, you've got your time, just get a few little belongings that you need, get yourself low, open the door slowly. If it's really smoky, look for where the fire exit is, and then make your way. But you are safer getting out.
Did you, at that stage, have any information about what the conditions in the lobbies and the stairwell inside the building were?
On one of my visits into the tower, I heard rumours that there was some people or some bodies on the stairs. But from being in fires as a firefighter, going in with hose into sort of flat fires, for example, I know that the hose is going to be all over the place. I know it's going to be difficult for people to come down. It's difficult for firefighters wearing BA walking down the stairs with all the hose and things like that. But it was just, I couldn't speak to somebody or give somebody advice to stay put when looking at the tower as it went on, you could see that it was jumping between it. Some flats it missed a flat, so you just knew it. In my opinion, from my experience for all the years, is that they would have been better off out.
Right. And just continuing with this theme, if you go to the top of page 6 of your statement, please, Mr. Egan, you say, during the incident I also took a couple of calls from control, but I can't remember exactly when they happened. This is the top of page 6.
Oh, okay.
Do you know, when you say I took a couple of calls, do you know how you received those calls? Was that on your radio or?
So this is a call from. That's a bit sort of perhaps poetic license. So Dan Merrick would take the call on the mobile telephone,
right.
But because I was there, I'm in charge at the time. He's relaying what's being said rather than him just giving me the phone. He's saying control, which I mentioned there. Just aid any I don't know if there's any confusion, but our control is in Merton, but on this night in question, it had fallen back to Stratford for maintenance or something. Mm. So that's why the officer from Stratford, the officer of the watch, phoned up. So these were just from phone calls from control, wanting to know can we do anything about what's happening with the fire survival guidance calls was one of them. And we're dealing with them as they're coming in, we're trying to allocate things, and probably the most important one really was from the officer of the watch wanting to know about changing the strategy.
Right. Can I just follow up what you've just told us, to see if I can piece it together? So the officer of the watch is at Stratford.
Yep.
Do you know, or did you know his name or her name?
No.
Right. And he or she speaks to Daniel Merrick on his mobile phone. On
the command unit's mobile phone.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
it's not his personal.
Not his personal one. No.
I see. And Daniel Merrick at this stage is what's his role on the command unit?
He's one of the watch managers who's supporting me, trying to do what I could do. He was mainly liaising with control, if I remember rightly, and taking details of any fire survival guidance calls that was coming through.
Okay. So is it a mobile telephone on the CU or some kind of radio?
It was the mobile telephone they was talking on.
Right. Would it be unusual for the control room to communicate with the command unit by mobile telephone?
It wouldn't be unusual. If you was from the fire ground back to control, it's a bit frowned upon because people were listening into messages and they want to know get a scene setting, what's happening. But the other way around, you had the officer in charge. They don't want to really. They just want to have a conversation, so they're not going to do that over the main screen radio because they want to. They want to speak to you and find out exactly what you're doing.
I see. Yes, I see.
Does that make sense?
Yes, essentially it's a private call.
A private call, but it's just easier to talk on rather than doing from me over received. Doing that on the radio, you just have a conversation, don't you? It's quicker.
And
Mr. Millers, I'm just wondering, you've got a little bit further to go,
I have, yes.
haven't you? Would it be convenient to have 5 minutes or thereabouts?
Yes, that's a good idea.
And then we'll see how the rest of the afternoon is going.
Good idea.
Would that be all right?
Mr. Chairman, yes, perfectly fine.
I think we ought to have a short break now, Mr. Egan. So I'm going to rise. We'll start again at 3:45, and then we'll see where the rest of the afternoon takes us. All right? Thank you. Right.
Mr.
Mr. Egan's
Chairman,
on
yes.
his way, I think.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Mr.
Yeah,
Egan.
thank you very much.
Ready to go on? Good, thank you.
Mr. Egan, you told us quite a lot of information about the writing on the wall in the foyer, and you took a picture of that, and you told us all about that information. My question is, do you know the name of the watch manager who was writing that list on the wall in the foyer?
No, I don't. I believe Pete Wolfenden will probably know the name of the person, if that helps at all.
Right. Let's see if I can. I don't want to create a memory, but let me see if I can jog your memory. Does the name Glyn Williams mean anything to you? Does that trigger a memory?
It does sound familiar.
All right.
Yeah.
Can I take you back to your statement and turn to page 6, please? And look at the fourth paragraph down, which starts, I then went to meet Pete Wolfenden in the tower to brief him. Where was he? Do you remember? In the tower?
Pete was he was at the ground floor of the tower, which was near where the sort of at the base of the stairs, near where the information was.
Okay. And you then say, I explained the new setup we had and what he should do. And then you go on to say, I said that the command unit would receive the information from the control room and record it. I would then prioritise the calls for assistance. I would then pass this on to him, telling him which flats needed to be attended, and then he had to relay this to Group Manager Richard Welch on the Bridgehead. In those 3 lines, is that the system, the new setup that you described to Pete Wolfenden?
Yeah, it was. Pete was now going to liaise. I wasn't ordering him, what he was going to do. But that's where he was going to fit into our structure.
Yeah. But just in terms of what the new setup was, it is what you've described in those 3 lines, what that new setup was.
Answer
That-
yes.
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 Okay, now just in terms of that new setup, the command unit would receive the information from the control room and record it, and then you would prioritise the calls for assistance. How would you prioritise the calls? What system would you use to prioritise calls?
So we went on the basis of those that were most vulnerable. So young children, people mobility issues, people that couldn't make their own way out of the premises, old age people that would have difficulties, bearing in mind we know it's going to be difficult because of the stairs, etc. And also, and obvious is the smoke, I know that, but to get people through these stairs is going to take a little bit of care to get through, and you couldn't just allow people to do that. You'd need to go and rescue them to get them through.
And how would you know whether particular individuals were priority individuals?
So that would come through on the information for control. Control would speak to the people on the phone, the residents on the phone, and they would gather that information for us. So they would tell us, whether they were. I don't know if there was any bedridden, but they'd say, are they bedridden? They've got mobility issues. Are they young children? Are there people on medication that need assistance out?
And under that new system, with the prioritisation done in the way you've described, how would that information then be communicated from CU7, where you were, to the Bridgehead?
So what happened was we have it on the graph of what we had, who was there. I would then radio through to Pete Wolfenden and giving him perhaps 2 or 3 flat numbers on a particular floor, and then give him a couple of minutes to process that, and then give him a little bit more information. the message come back that we can't do anything at the moment because there was too much information coming through. They're still waiting to brief the crews to go in.
Right, but under the system then, so Pete Wolfenden would be, what, in the tower, and you would be in the CU?
Yes.
And you would communicate by radio, would
Yeah.
you? I see. And Pete, where would Pete Wolfenden, under this new system, be standing in the tower when he received those calls from you?
So we got to the stage where we're getting all this information in. We've set up a priority. We can see what we've got, and we're adding to that every moment. I'm then radioing through to Pete to give him that information. It then comes back that nothing's happening. You know, there's too much information. I can't keep giving, because all of a sudden everything sort of starts to become a priority. There's too much information. So I go to the base of the tower again to try and have a face-to-face conversation with Pete to try and get a feel of, is there a better way that we can do this? Is there something else we can do to try and get this information? Like I said, I know the crews were going in, I know they were doing their bit, but I'm focused on fire survival guidance. I'm wanting them to do more, and they probably can't do any more, but it's what I want. Does that make sense? I want them to keep going,
yes.
And I'm sure they were, but you're going to get to a stage where there's too many firefighters trying to get through a small gap to go.
Just in terms of the system, though, I just want to get a feel for where Pete Wolfenden was supposed to be under your system and what he was then supposed to do with the information. So the idea was that he would stand in the foyer of the tower and receive your message by radio. Is that
yes,
right?
that was the initial.
Okay,
brief.
and then what was he supposed, under that system, what would he do next? What was he supposed to do next?
So he was then to give that to the whoever was in charge of the Bridgehead. When Pete first goes to the base of the tower and Tom Goodall takes over from me, I then go back into the tower to speak to Pete, to show him so I can explain to him exactly what I've got. So we've got a list in the command unit. He's standing near the wall with information on it, and there's the crew manager that's there with it as well, or the watch manager. And that's where we have this conversation of the command and control, who's going to be in it, Tom Goodall, but I'm going to be taking it, Tom's going to be overseeing it. We give it to you, Pete, and then Pete's going to tell the Bridgehead which flat and which floor to go for.
Right. Now,
their priority.
Just taking it in stages, would Pete Wolfenden record the information that he was receiving from you in CU7?
I don't know. I don't know if he did record it. I couldn't say. I don't know whether he recorded it. All I know is that he passed it on. He gave that information.
Okay, and how did he pass it on? By radio?
By radio.
Right, okay. So just at that stage, we've got the new system, which was control room to CU7, CU7 to Pete Wolfenden by radio in the foyer, and then Pete Wolfenden from the foyer to the Bridgehead, again by radio.
That's right.
Right. What was the point of having Pete Wolfenden as an intermediate link in the chain of communication between CU7 and the Bridgehead?
Because there's just too much information. There was too many fire survival guidance calls. If there was one or two calls, it would just go from the command unit, would go straight to the Bridgehead, and then the Bridgehead would then delegate firefighters to go to that flat or that floor.
Right.
But because there were so many, the Bridgehead's got, they've got their things that they have to do, their safe systems of work. They've got to prepare, make sure that the BA crews are safe before they go in. They've got to take a gauge of the smoke in the building, because I think the third or fourth time I go in, the Bridgehead is now moved to the ground floor. Yeah, so things were changed in order to. Sorry,
Right.
things were changed. In order to,
We'll come back. We'll come to that if we need to. Yes, I understand. Sorry, I've interrupted your flow.
That's okay. Sorry.
So it sounds as if the logic of having more links in the chain was driven by the volume of fire survival guidance calls being received. Is that right?
Yeah, I think the structure was a little bit stretched out before, because we had too many different people taking command units, taking the fire survival guidance calls. Now we had one specific unit that was taking it, and then that information was being passed to the base of the tower.
And under the new system, with Pete Wolfenden as the link in the chain between CU7 and the Bridgehead, did any information come back from the Bridgehead to Pete Wolfenden in the foyer about the success or lack of success of any BA deployment?
No information came back to Pete regarding any successful deployments.
Did information come back to CU7 from the Bridgehead in any other way about the success or lack of success of any individual deployment?
Not from the Bridgehead.
Where from?
What Tom Goodall found out that there was welfare centres set up. I think there was 3 separate welfare centres set up. So he had I think he had 2 watch managers that he had them going around and speaking to people that were there, and that's what's recorded on on the photo that we've seen a few times on the left-hand side with the numbers and the flats. That's where we got that information from.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that in just a moment because I want to follow that up if I can. But before I do, can I just ask you 1 or 2 further questions? First of all, who at that stage, when you'd set up this new system of communication, was in charge of the Bridgehead? Do you remember?
When it was first set up, I believed it to still be watch manager D'Souza. It's only when I went into the tower and I saw Pat Goldborn and Richard Welch in there, and that's when I found it. And I believe again that Richard Welch was the Bridgehead commander.
Okay.
Or in charge of the lobby sector. Sorry.
And once they were in place, did you speak to them about FSG communications at all?
I did, yeah.
What was that discussion?
The discussion was I wanted them to commit more crews in to save savable life, and I probably said it in a way that challenged them maybe, but I was told that they are doing it, you know, as if yeah, but it just didn't feel like they were.
Why didn't it feel like they were?
Because we weren't getting the information back, so everything I was giving them, I was getting nothing coming back. The guys on the command unit are getting stressed out. Even they're thinking, you know, can they put sets on? You know, have we not got enough people to go in? Can we not commit them? Right. But it's just things change. You know, the Bridgehead had to move down. You can't just. You have to be. You know, they probably done the right thing. These guys by commanding and controlling the numbers of BA that went up at the tower. But to me, as I said, that's how I felt. I just wanted them to keep going and just tell me, come back to me and tell me, yeah, we've sent a crew or we haven't sent a crew. We weren't getting that information back.
Did they, that's very clear, did they tell you why they weren't sending information back to you about the success or failure of a deployment of BA wearers?
No, they didn't.
Did you press them for a reason as to why you weren't getting that information back from them?
Pete, when I had this, or I made the comments to them that's what I wanted, Pete Wolfenden says that he's already spoken to them about it. They've just moved the Bridgehead, so hopefully they're going to start committing crews again.
Just focusing on the question of you in CU7 receiving feedback from the Bridgehead about successful or unsuccessful deployments. Can I just press you a little?
Okay.
Did you push Welch or Goldborn to give you that information?
I didn't push them. Like I said, I did speak to them, and it was frustration, which I'm sure everybody was frustrated at the time. What I did do is I pushed Pete Wolfenden for answers.
Who did you push for answers?
Pete Wolfenden.
Sorry,
because
Pete,
I'm giving Pete the information and he's not giving it back to me.
Right.
When he's pushed, he says he hasn't got it.
Do you know whether Pete Wolfenden pressed Richard Welch and Pat Goulburn for feedback as to the success or failure of any deployments?
He did, yes.
And what did you know from him that they had told him?
I think that there was I'm led to believe, well, Pete said there was a discussion between Pete and Richard Welch. Similar vein, Pete wants BA crews committed into where we're saying we want them to go, and Richard Welch, they're controlling how many people go through and the resources that they've got. That conversation that they had, the heated discussion, was overheard by whoever the crew manager or the watch manager that was writing on the wall, and that affected that individual. Because when I came into the tower, he was physically or visibly upset, angry, and I thought he was just, it was the pressure of everything that was going on. He didn't feel as if he had any support, so I tried to speak to him. And it was clear that something had happened that to make him change from being really helpful before. He was quite so upset, probably angry, but controlled. And he overheard the conversation, or the probably the heated conversation between Pete Wolfenden and Richard Welch.
Can you tell us the name of the watch manager who had overheard that conversation?
That's what I don't know if it was that Glyn Williams. The guy leaves the incident ground a little bit later on.
Right. Okay. Thank you. If you then look at the bottom of page 6 and the top of page 7 of your statement, you say to them in the second last line of page 6, I said we need to get people upstairs, but I was told they weren't flooding the tower with firefighters. I spoke to Group Manager Richard Welch and Group Manager Pat Goulburn, who were in charge on the Bridgehead, and said we need to get people out. They said we're doing it. I said all these calls are coming through, we need to get people out, and they repeated we are doing it. I told Pete Wolfenden that they were snowed under, and he said they thought they would start pushing through. We've looked at a bit of that discussion. My question is, was your impression of that discussion that Group Managers Welch and Goulburn now agreed that evacuation was the right strategy?
No, that wasn't what the discussion was. That they need. I wanted them to commit. I wanted them to commit BA crews to a specific flat that Pete Wolfenden has told them. That was my priority, wasn't it? Yeah, I know they had other things to do, but then I needed that feedback. If they couldn't do it, then I needed that to let me know.
I see what you mean.
So it wasn't the evacuating the whole premises.
I understand. So when you say we need to get people out, it's getting specific people out which were targeted in response to the specific FSG information you were getting, as opposed to overall evacuation.
To be perfectly honest, the words that I used there is probably exactly the words that I used at the time,
right.
and it was meant that a bit of both really. I think we needed to get the people out,
Okay.
and they were two group managers at the base of the tower.
Do you know whether this discussion that you had with them, Welch and Goulburn, was before or after the stay put advice was formally revoked?
I think that conversation was after that was revoked. And the only reason, because where the command unit would have been told from control that they're changing the strategy, I wasn't in the command unit. Even though I spoke to or I was party to the conversation with control that said, where I'm saying we need to change it, you need to speak to the incident commander. When it is eventually changed, I'm not in the command unit when that happens, because I'm at the tower.
Right.
So when I come back, all of a sudden, it just gets mentioned in passing, if that makes sense, because we were still we were telling everyone to get out anyway. So it was like mentioned, no, it's changed.
From the time when you were in the tower, did you... Well, let me just ask you, where were you when you were at the tower?
So at the base of the tower, so just by at the bottom of the stairs. So through the first couple of times, was, I think through the main exit, but then other times you had to go in through the side, where we'd main access through like some glass vision panels.
Did you go up to the Bridgehead at all?
Only when I've done my handover at the end of my involvement with the incident.
Right. And when you were at in the tower, at the base of the tower, did you see firefighters being dispatched, or queuing up to go up to the Bridgehead?
Yeah, there was loads of firefighters. There was firefighters on the ground, at the base of the stairs. There was firefighters on the mezzanine floor that led into the internal corridor. And I think there was a few firefighters, there was a few firefighters standing out in the side where the side exit or side entrance was being made, because they was cutting the glass out of the window.
Yes. And did you get any impression from what you saw of the numbers of firefighters queuing up to go up into the tower?
Yeah, there was loads. There was loads of firefighters. They was all standing there, but it was quiet. Eerily.
If you go to page 7 of your statement and look at paragraph 2, you say that you advised Pete Wolfenden that he should ask me for more information if he needed it. I then went back to the command unit, and you explain that. And then you say, 4 lines up from the bottom of that paragraph, we were getting lots of calls, but I knew we weren't getting lots of firefighters into the tower, so the approach had to be structured. And then you say, I decided we should get everyone out below the 7th floor. Pete Wolfenden said, I know. I said, forget stay put policy. If it's safe to get them out, then get out. From the outside, I could see that the flats were being engulfed in flames. First of all, do you know why you mentioned the 7th floor?
Because when you looked at the building, it was above the 7th floor that it was, in effect, all alight. Whereas below the 7th floor, I think there might have been 1 or 2 flats that were affected, but it was... Trying to remember what it looked like. It looked like there was like a clear line that from the 7th floor up. It might have been from the 8th floor. That's why I said the 7th floor to clear. Because right. What I'm thinking there is, even though those people in them lower floors aren't really affected, we should just, if we start getting them out, it might show that everybody can get out. Right. That's my thought process. If we start doing there where there isn't much smoke, or I believe there isn't much smoke.
And but on the other hand, group managers Welch and Goldborn had said that they were getting people out, they were doing it, as you said, and those were higher floors, were they?
They were. It's just it's your perception, isn't it? So it was really horrible, and you outside, it's all kicking off.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the outside, it's devastation, and then you've got all these firefighters that are trying to get into the building, and they can't just walk in because of the amount of stuff that's falling down. Eventually, so you know they risk their lives getting in. The police done a brilliant job with their shields helping us. They done a brilliant job getting us in. So we was going through little gaps, so even I could get through. If you know what I mean, it was like really tight. You couldn't just run in through a doorway. And then once they was in, there wasn't this, but it was a calmness. It was like they was pleased that they'd got in and they're going to do something, but it was just quiet, and all the firefighters were just lined up. And you know, there was no one jostling for position. There wasn't people laughing and joking. There was people talking, but it was the whole block was quiet. You couldn't hear the fire really that was going on outside. It was really, really weird. It's like it changed. People got inside and it was as if the firefighters were waiting for something.
Mr. Egan, I'm going to ask the chairman to stop now for the rest of the day, I think, if that's convenient
You've
to
got
you.
more than another 10 minutes.
I do.
So,
Yes, I do. Okay, yes.
Yes.
I've got a little bit more to go. Not much more, but I think Mr. Egan's had a long day, and it's probably
He
right.
has, and
Right that we break
it's
now.
not been easy, I do understand that. If you were to tell him that it was only another 10 minutes, he might have a different view, but I don't think you should trim your questions with that in mind.
No, and I think given that, and given that I know that Mr. Egan has had a long day, I think it's right that we should rise now. If Mr. Chairman, that's acceptable to you, and we can resume tomorrow.
Yes. Well, you heard that exchange, Mr. Egan. I'm afraid Mr. Millett's got some more questions, and it's not going to be 10 minutes, but I hope it's not going to be too long.
Okay.
I think it would be in your interest and everyone else's that we stop now.
Thank you very much, sir.
I'm going to have to ask you to come back tomorrow,
Okay.
and I hope that's not too inconvenient.
No, it's all
Well,
right.
a nuisance. Of course, it's a nuisance.
Sorry.
I'm sorry about that, but we'll get through your evidence as quickly as we can.
Okay.
And 10 o'clock.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I wonder whether on this occasion I might make an application. Might we say 9:30 or 9:45? And I'll try and trim my questions down overnight so that I won't detain Mr. Egan
Well,
any
Mr.
longer than I
Egan,
need to tomorrow morning.
you're coming from Dagenham, did you say?
Romford.
Romford,
Yeah.
sorry. Bad geography. Is it difficult for you to get here by
No, it's fine.
half past
That's
9?
fine. That's okay.
I'm inclined to suggest then the sooner you start, the sooner you'll get away.
Yeah.
So should we say half past 9?
That's
Is that all
fine.
right for you?
So thank you.
Yeah, all right. Well, we'll stop there, thank you, and resume at 9:30 tomorrow. No talking about your evidence, of course. Right?
Thank you.
So 9:30 tomorrow, please, thank you. Would you like to go to the ushers?
Right, lovely. Thank you very much.